At the end of his career, his last major fictional film was Wagner's opera Parsifal, with an extraordinary performance as the female lead, Kundry, in that opera. But back to Hitler. The first section involves all sorts of scenes, some taken from circus and vaudeville, some drawing on Weimar culture, some drawing on what inevitably replaces it, use of dolls, use of sets that are lit in red, use of a lot of flame, use of a lot of sort of occultistic, Thule, Gothic imagery, to create a sort of sensibility for that, the nature of a German biological romanticism, really, quintessentially a Central European artistic sensibility, which has been completely voided in the post-war dispensation. Syberberg has become almost a cultural unperson, although people know he's there and he lives as an old man in contemporary Germany and so on, because he's gone back into the area that movement originated from. It's not that movement in so much as the culmination of that area, but it comes out of it. The dilemma that Syberberg has is he's not a politician, he's not a political partisan, he's a German partisan. He's a partisan for German culture. And therefore his perspective is you cannot have German artistic culture with this voltaic energy, this storm centre, this sort of condenser battery removed from the circuit. The energy, even to rebel against it, of what it is to be German, comes from this vortex. Therefore to disprivilege it is to cut it out completely. It's like Elizabethan tragedy without the example of the Greeks in the past, or Seneca as a sort of low Roman version that Shakespeare was aware of. You have to have that primary fodder, that primary material, fuel, upon which to feed. And if you can't have it because it's denied you in a particular era, then you can't express nationally what you are. And this is the real thesis of this film, which people saw in the 70s and thought, interesting critique of the fact the Germans won't mention their past by a fringe German director. That's how it was first regarded. That's why the BBC used to show it, insofar as you show things extensively when they're over 7 hours. But I remember, you know what Christmas Day's like, you know, when you get sick of your relatives. So you go into another room and watch the film on BBC Two. And I remember in 1980 watching Syberberg's Hitler for 7.5 hours on a grainy black and white set. And, you know, it was quite extraordinary in all sorts of ways. The second section also has a significant, if potted, filmic history of German 19th century art, added in, pictorial art, added into the general mixture. If anyone logs in onto Syberberg's site, he's got several, and there's a significant Wikipedia entry concerning him, which details all the controversies that have engulfed him. The first section is Syberberg, interesting and provocative German director. The second section is Syberberg's films. The third section is comparison and criticism. The fourth section is controversy, the danger of anti-Semitism. So you can see the chronology as it sort of goes down. But there's links to his site and to your ability to, if you've got the patience or the machinery so to do, download Hitler, a film from Germany. One of his more outrageous ideas is that the entire experience, so somebody born who comes culturally of age, he's mentally born if you like, just after it, is so extreme, is so devastating, that his way of dealing with it is to internalise it and view it as a film. So that's why he calls it Hitler, a film from Germany. So he actually sees the past as a film. Now, many people, particularly people who are not particularly artistic, would consider this to be either a non sequitur or a disprivileging of reality, or the sort of thing artists do to cope with life or whatever. But in actual fact, for somebody such as him and his sensibility, it's because he privileges these things more than anything else, that he's prepared to make a film of them. Because he has essentially a spiritual view of art. He doesn't see it as a money-making exercise or a trivialization or a fake authentication or something to do with one's time between birth and death, or an attempt to sort of please others or gain kudos for oneself. He actually sees it as a sort of spiritual and moral transcription. The third section is very interesting because this is about the shower, which is totally accepted as a fact in this section of the film, for which there is no apology. And this is the interesting thing about it, that it's dealt with in a tone and in a briskness that's almost identical to the way Menachem Begin describes the ethnic cleansing of Palestinians in his autobiography, which is called My Life, I believe, just like Tzolk'l Mosley's. And when asked about these events, Begin said, we did what we had to. Let there not be talk of morality. There is only the necessity of action and vigour. That's it. No more talk. And that's the sort of attitude that you get in that third section. I think those few worrying bells went off when that section was seen. But because it's not in any sense revisionist or even pre-revisionist, it's again the view that you get subliminally from that section is that if Germany is to ever have a future, it has to master his view, filmically nonetheless, of the consequences of these events. In some ways, he's preaching what Nietzsche called self-overcoming, whereby you say yes to life, you accept even the most unpleasant things, you absorb them just as you absorb rubbish and trash in a fire. You step over it to other things and to other glories. It's the creative use of destruction, or the refusal to be imprisoned by the consequences of the destructive urge, seen as part of the human potentiality. In other words, it's a non-dualist view of morals, an explicitly non-Christian viewpoint, but not belaboured as such. In the fourth section, with Children of Hell, he talks about, with his daughter, and Heinz Schubert, who remains ubiquitous as a varied sort of presence and trickster, wearing multiple hats and playing multiple parts, including Himmler, throughout the film. Syberberg talks about the legacy of what it means to be German in the modern world. The interesting thing is that this film deals very bluntly and very explicitly with the fact that for almost everyone outside Germany, since 1945, whenever a German is presented to them, the almost implacable urge is to ask them about these events. I remember I was at some party or something when I was about 18, and some German student turned up, and various people made a beeline for them, and the first thing that they were really asked of any substance, beyond how they were and what the weather was what's your view